Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Awaken the Sleeping Lions. My name is Silver Storic, and I am delighted to introduce my incredible friend and special guest, Mr. Will Blunderfield.
Hello.
Welcome, brother.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be on your show.
It's super, super exciting. Will is an incredible human. From the moment we met, I thought there's something special about this man.
That's what I thought about you. You were naked on a rock, growling. And I was like, I need to know this man. Because I was putting it out into the universe. I was like, wouldn't it be nice to meet another man who likes to like rewild himself in a very like embodied, visceral way? And then 3 or 4 months later, you came into my life.
And we met at a cold dip, didn't we? And there was like, I think there must have been like 15, 20 other men there. And you and I were the only ones that were naked.
Yes. And I was actually with another cold plunge group, and we would used to go on Wednesday mornings, and they were not really into the whole naked thing, but they respected my decision to go naked. But they kind of were like laughing, like, oh my God, can you believe he's getting naked? But then after continually just standing in my power, and I just love no barrier between me and nature when I'm doing those things. So after the months went by, some of the dudes who used to get really uncomfortable by me being naked, actually, they have a film crew, and they said, hey, we're actually pretty inspired by what you're doing. Could we do like an expose on your naked, rewilding stuff? So that was like a good lesson to just, stay the course, make art and live your life in such a way that lights you up. And in the words of David Bowie, every time we second guess our own instincts and try to please others, or in the words of David Bowie, please your audience, that's when you make the worst choices. And when you make the best choices, it's when you just listen to your heart and do what feels best. And I know you and I both love just having no barriers between ourselves and nature when we're doing things like cold plunging. And I was doing some research actually this morning on polyester, and a lot of the clothes that people wear to do cold plunging or to go to hot yoga, they're made of polyester, which leach microplastics into the water, which actually emasculate men, cause lymphoma and other types of cancer. And when they heat up, they actually leach xenoestrogens right through the skin into the bloodstream, which is a carcinogen and makes men less masculine.
It's fascinating stuff. And Will is an avid scholar. I mean, I don't know anyone who studies as thoroughly as you do. I mean, I walk into your bathroom and there's like 11 certificates hung on the wall.
So when I'm taking it down, I can be like, oh, look at all the fun things that I got to do.
You've studied with all these incredible masters. Like,
I'm grateful.
Mantak Chia, for example.
Chia, yeah.
And what I love about you, Will, is that you know who you are, and you're not afraid to share every ounce of that with the world. And you're not afraid to be radical. And that's really what it takes in this day and age to really shake shit up and to disrupt the patterns that we find ourselves in. And this is really, what we're uncovering in Awaken the Sleeping Lions. And it's funny because the name of the podcast came from a quote that you forwarded to me, didn't it?
Yeah, I heard a meme. I saw a meme. I believe David Avocado Wolf posted it on his Telegram, and it had a roaring line in the meme. And it said, you didn't come forth to wake up the sheep. You came forth to wake up the sleeping lions.
Wow.
And I really like that. And I'm glad you resonated with it.
It's so powerful. As soon as I heard it, I was like, wow, we need to use this, because so much energy can be wasted on trying to wake up the sheep, who are the followers or the conformists, or the ones who are just going to, stand in line and do what they're told. And that can take a lot of energy.
It can.
As opposed to waking up the sleeping
Can you hold this for a second?
lions.
Yes.
Who are really ready to, put their neck on the line and put themselves forward for the benefit of humanity in this incredible planet we live on.
Yes. And it becomes so much easier. It's like there's that book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point, or like the 100th monkey theory, the idea that when we put ourselves out there. There's this viral video that I saw several years ago on YouTube of this dude like doing crazy dancing at a music festival or something on the side of a grassy knoll. And everybody's like looking at him, and he's just like dancing and just having a good time. He's like got his shirt off and just like having a wild dancey time. And they, at first people are just like, what the hell is this dude doing? Like, what the heck? And then one or two start to join him, and they're all dancing. And then after about 2 minutes, the whole side of the grassy knoll, like 500 people, are all doing crazy fun dancing and connecting and making eye contact. And that always really stuck with me. I was like, okay, if I can just have the balls to keep doing what I'm doing because it feels so good, then I'm noticing other men are starting to metaphorically dance along as well in their own fun, ecstatic, blissful way. And this is what I was telling some guys at Wreck Beach yesterday, you know, it's just so great to see these walls of labels and identities, you know, like gay, straight, even bi, crumbling. And we're just really stepping into more masculinity together. And as you and I know, there is a war on masculinity, both through the chemicals that they put in the food, and also just through this sort of ideological sort of dampening of the wild impulse. There's a book called The Giver by Lois Lowry that we had to read, is required reading in grade 5. And it always stuck with me because in that book, it was this society where everybody was the same and they all just wore really boring clothes. And every morning when you reached a certain age, if you started to get stirrings, they called it in the book. So say a boy was 12 or 13, he started to get stirrings, which is sexual urges. He had to go and get an injection to lessen that sexual urge.
Really?
Basically, wow. To completely dampen it or to completely suppress it. So the whole society was receiving these injections to prevent them from having any sort of sexual or erotic proclivity. And then when they hit a certain age, they would be released to elsewhere. Nobody in the society really knew what that was, but later in the book, I don't want to give it away, but I'll give it away. Later in the book, you realize that being released to elsewhere means you're being euthanized. They give the old people an injection when they reach a certain age, and they're euthanized. And I was like, wow, like a lot of that is happening in our society. And we don't need to get too controversial, but just the general idea of suppressing the sex urge and then demeaning or belittling our elders, is something that we see a lot of in our culture. And we live on a First Nations land, and in their cultures, the elderly were to be elevated, and
exactly,
they were the shamans and they were the wisdom keepers.
Yeah, so it's really, really intriguing to dive into, you know, the oppression and the suppression, because if we don't understand that is in play, then we don't understand the game that we're part of, and how our masculine energy, our warrior energy, our sexual power is being suppressed to keep us submissive and compliant. And yeah, I mean, we've both been subject to that, haven't we?
Yes.
And we've known something was up. We've known something was wrong, and we really sought out a way to break free from that. And I'd love to know from you what was the catalyst for you breaking out of that?
I think the major realization was when I became addicted to cocaine back in 2013. I was teaching lots and lots of hot yoga, living a very sort of unbalanced lifestyle. Hot yoga is great, but teaching 20 hot yoga classes a week is not great. My brain was being fried.
That's all my sweat.
Yeah, all my electrolytes were gone. And, you know, it was this rat race. I was like, well, shit, you know, if I want to pay my rent, I got to teach all these classes. And it just became this rat race. And one of my students invited me to a party, and he, in the back alley, gave me some cocaine on a key. He's like, try this. This will give you so much energy. It's going to make you feel so good. And so I like snorted it, and I was like, whoa. And I felt so amazing, so empowered. And then 20 minutes later, crashed, anxiety. But for some reason, I think maybe I was also addicted to anxiety. So not only was I addicted to the high, but also the anxiety, because I was in a state of anxiousness and depletion for so many years, being bullied for being the only boy in choir, being pushed into trash cans and lockers and people drawing dicks in my mouth on my student council posters and throwing rotten food at me. So I'd be training for cross country, track and field, going for runs in West Van. And I never knew when the next piece of food or rotten eggs or milk carton was going to be thrown out of a window of a drive-by car. I never knew.
Wow.
So my nervous system, I think I'm still healing from that.
Healing from living on high alert.
Yeah, high alert. And also realizing that I was addicted to the high alert anxiety state that cocaine gave me. And so the thing that really helped me heal, the catalyst, as you were asking about, was breath work.
Right.
Breath work. Oh my gosh. I can just lie on the ground and breathe for an hour and I don't have to think about anything. My breathwork teacher kept saying, stay out of story, come into your body, feel what's going on. And he would press on certain, his name's Edward Dangerfield. I had met him at a music festival in Squamish a few years ago. He would press on certain Chinese acupressure points as I was doing the breath work, and I would have these cathartic releases. I'd cry, I'd scream, and it was just so healing. And we were in a group of 10 people once, and I had a major release. And it was like, I felt like I wasn't even just releasing for myself. I was releasing for all the men and all the people and the First Nations people that kept coming into my experience. I was like, whoa, we're on unceded First Nations land, and the raping and the pillaging and the degradation and the annihilation of all these First Nations people, that felt huge. So I was releasing a lot, I felt like, on behalf of myself and the collective. And then part of me was like, oh my gosh, am I being too loud? But I was like, no, Lane, just let it happen. Let it happen. And then we did a sharing circle after that session. And this woman, a mother, she's probably in her 50s. When it was her turn to share, she looked at me and I was like, oh shit, was she pissed off that I was being so loud? She said, you. I went, she's like, thank you so much for just for having that scream. Because when you did that primal scream, it triggered something in me to release all those years of when I gave birth to my 6 children and I was trying to be so quiet on the hospital bed with my feet in the stirrups because I didn't want to, be a crazy lady. But you letting out that primal scream helped me let out my primal scream that I've been suppressing for years, not only from childbirth, but just from being a suppressed woman in this world. So that was cool. It's almost like a metaphor for when we allow ourselves to heal, then it gives permission to others to do the same, men and women.
Yeah, a couple of really great points that you've brought up there. And really, when we think about the collective shame that men carry, it's an incredible weight because of all the atrocities that men before us have committed.
Yeah.
And that's in our nervous system, right? It's in our bodies, it's in our subconscious, and I truly believe there's a lot of shame attached to that. And what you describe is giving people permission to release that as well. And I think that's really, really powerful.
Feel it to heal it.
Yeah, feel it to heal it, and being able to get into our bodies so that we can feel it, as opposed to being stuck in our minds trying to keep going and trying to work it all out.
Yeah.
And trying to look good on the outside when on the inside, there can be
not okay.
A lot of discourse, a lot of turmoil.
Yes.
And you've been working with a number of men in your new program, haven't you, over the course of the last year?
Years, yeah.
And I'd love to know from you what you've discovered with working with that amount of men. What are the common themes that are holding them back or restricting them or creating suffering for them?
Well, I think that a lot of men feel like they're not manly enough. And so I teach them my holy trinity of rewilding and remasculinizing technologies, which is superfood nutrition and detoxification, semen retention, and sexual kung fu, sexual transmutation skills. So a lot of men don't feel manly. And that's multifactorial reasons.
Yeah.
As you said, the ancestral trauma that's stored in the nervous system that we're not allowed to heal, or our society doesn't give us very many tools to heal. The chemicals that they put in the food, namely atrazine. 60% of all American corn crops are sprayed with atrazine, which is a emasculating chemical that actually causes frogs to switch genders.
And this is really important because, you know, we wake up in the morning and sometimes it can be a real struggle to just get our brains going. And what Will's alluding to here is that, you know, what we're ingesting can affect our performance and our brain cognition as well, which, you know, makes it really hard to just even get going.
Totally. And having been sort of addicted to food, like I realize I'll always be an addict. So for me, it's about getting addicted to the right things, more life-giving things. And so now I'm addicted to healing my trauma. Like I'm addicted to doing 45 minutes of breath work every day. I'm addicted to eating lots of really healthy, green, organic things. I'm addicted to playing with my cock and learning how to separate orgasm from ejaculation, because my teacher, Montauk Chia, says that actually it's good. Like masturbation is a Victorian term, which means self-pollution. But in ancient China, they called masturbation solo cultivation. And they actually would prescribe it. Chinese doctors would prescribe masturbation and sex poses for their patients to help them heal certain maladies. And so now I'm addicted to really using masturbation to actually rewild myself and cultivate a potency in my entire being. Because most men just have a very small balloon, just the cock and balls, to store their energy. And once it gets too intense, too pressurized, then they need to ejaculate. And during the last 2 years, when there's been so much lockdown stuff, that has caused a lot of my clients to become addicted to porn. Or people seek me out because they say, oh my gosh, there's so much lockdowns right now. I'm so stressed. And I've resorted to going onto Pornhub 6 times a day and ejaculating 7 times a day. And I feel so tired.
It's incredibly draining, isn't it? And I see a lot of men looking for that instant gratification or endorphins or just something to feel good and break them out of that monotony or that shame or mediocrity. And it's quite contradictory because, you know, masturbation can create more shame. So it just accentuates that
downward spiral.
Yeah. Whereas what you're really talking about is it's self-pleasure, really, isn't it?
Self-pleasure, yeah. Self-love.
Would you like to describe a self-pleasure practice for men to differentiate that from, you know, just whacking off to porn, for example?
Totally. So one of the seminal practices, no pun intended, of sexual kung fu meaning daily discipline in this context. So it's the daily discipline of harnessing and directing your sex energy. And sex energy is life energy. And that's why they've shamed us. That's why they circumcise us. That's why they put shame in our root chakras. That's why so many young boys are sexually abused by Catholic priests and other sort of figures, is because the dominator system thrives. Sexual shaming and cutting us off from our root is a cog in the wheel of the dominator culture that we find ourselves in. Because if you can cut men and women off from their root, then you don't have to actually put a real cage around them. You cage them by cutting them off from that which is wild and free within them. And so realizing that sexual energy is the key to spiritually reparenting ourselves, I always really encourage men to do testicle breathing. And so basically you just sit naked with your balls on the edge of a chair, your balls hanging off. So your sits bones are on the edge of the chair. Your balls are not touching anything. And then you inhale into your testicles. And then you exhale, spiral the energy around your testicles, up the back, down the front of each testicle. What do your testicles feel like right now? Smile into that feeling. And what we find is if we do a 21-day reset where you don't ejaculate for 21 days, you really feel this technique because you've got more juice in your balls to circulate. So if you don't feel it right now, try visualizing it. because another key to really feeling it is using your imagination. So it's like, if I could feel this, what would it feel like? A tingling liquid light percolating in your balls. And then if the dominator system shame comes up, tell yourself as you're doing this, I'm shameless, I'm fearless, I'm doubtless.
I'm shameless, I'm fearless, I'm doubtless.
Because fear in the present moment is fear, fear in the past is shame, and fear in the future is doubt. So you're probably the first man in your lineage for several generations who's addressing sexual healing head on. So give yourself a break and use those mantras whenever you need to. Another one I like is from Matt Kahn, the spiritual teacher. He says, may the energy I'm sensing from others be cleared away, transmuted completely, return to source now. Thank you. Two of the most powerful mantras in the English language are thank you and I love you. So you can even just thank your sexual center for the potency that it has. Thank you. I love you.
Thank you. I love you.
And in the context of arousal, you can continue to do testicle breathing. So you focus on your testicles and you can start to stroke your lingam, which is code for penis in Sanskrit and tantric bedroom arts. And it really literally means pillar of light. So I love Tantra from the East, as well as sexual Kung Fu, because they have all these really beautiful names for the sex organs.
Yeah.
For example, the balls are called the dragon pearls.
That's so cool.
Yeah, right? Because it completely takes the shame of the Victorian sort of ancestry that we often have in the West completely out of it. And then you're so much more easily able to really literally drop into your root of the anus, sex organ, navel point. Kundalini yoga is a lot of bringing the energy up, at least the Kundalini yoga that's popular in the West, whereas sexual Kung Fu is about bringing the energy up and then bringing it back down to store it in the navel. Also in Kundalini yoga, often they almost become like monks or nuns, and they're always wearing all white, and they're not allowed to, have any really sex. Meanwhile, the leader was actually raping women. It came out last year that Yogi Bhajan was secretly having a lot of illicit sort of rapey kind of sex with his 12 secretaries and other people in the community. So not to bash that community, but I think it's important that we incorporate our erotic energy within our spirituality. Otherwise, if you suppress it, just like with Yogi Bhajan, it squirts out in a very sort of life-depleting way.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's really, really powerful what you say there, because if that sexual energy is suppressed or shamed, then it can come out in that incredibly toxic or harmful or unhealthy way.
Right.
And really, when we're talking about the sexual center, that's really the root of our life force and our creativity and our energy and the flow from all the chakras, because that's the first chakra. And if that is blocked, and if that is shamed, and it's not paid attention to, then it creates dis-ease in the whole system, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's the root. That's why you see a lot of yogis will sit on their left heel when they're in a cross-legged pose.
Right.
Or my teacher Mantak Chia says, take a tennis ball and place it on your perineum, because it helps you like ground down into your root. And the perineum is the external pressure point for the prostate gland. So we've also been taught not only that our genitals are bad, but that our anus is bad. And a lot of my clients are working through this sort of gay panic of playing with their anus. My teacher Mantak Chia says, if you want more power in your life, play with your anus. And that means like squeeze and release your anus, learn how to engage it, because in the context of arousal, that's another way that you can make masturbation life-giving. You can literally squeeze the anus and perineum to pump the energy up your spine, to nourish your higher centers of your pineal and pituitary, or you can pump it up into your low belly to get really grounded. The low belly is the safest place to store masculine, potent, fiery sexual energy because of the high surface area of the intestines. So yeah, it's play with your anus, and get you or your partner. You can take some castor oil or coconut oil, make sure your fingernails are cut short, and in and up 5 centimeters in from the anal opening is the prostate gland.
And back towards the groin.
Back towards the groin, yeah. And if you stimulate that, you can have amazing prostate orgasms. And you can even do a ritual with or without stimulation where you have just a timer, you're by yourself, and you speak to your soul in the second person. Soul, I want you to remove any imprints from your cock and prostate out your mouth through sound and breath for the next 10 minutes. Set the timer and then watch what happens.
Yeah.
You might start to vomit, have a puke bucket ready. You never know what's been stored, what imprints are stored in the prostate from you or your ancestors.
Yeah, it's really important to exercise that prostate for men, isn't it? Because it prevents prostate cancer.
Yes.
And also it's shame releasing.
Totally shame releasing.
You would think that's contradictory, but
Yeah,
but actually,
totally.
being able to relax the sphincter and to
Yeah.
pleasure the sphincter and the prostate can release a lot of shame for men.
Most definitely. And I want to quickly touch on the idea of SEMA retention, because the one criticism that I get for teaching SEMA retention is from medical doctors, and they say, oh, this is horrible. It's important that men ejaculate a lot because otherwise the tension builds up and they'll get prostate cancer. And there actually are no studies showing that. And I'm not saying to never ejaculate again. I'm saying learn how to choose when you want to ejaculate, because there's nothing more empowering than that. Right? So, for example, say you ejaculate 6 times a day, like some of my clients were, and they're complaining that they're sick, sad, and tired. So then I say, okay, let's do a reset. Try not ejaculating for 7 days. Then they get back to me like, oh my gosh, by day 4, I felt so energized and my business started to improve and I got all these creative ideas. And then they ejaculated on Sunday, and that's fine. So it's not about never ejaculating. I agree. I agree that no FAP monk mode is probably not the most healthy because you are suppressing. But if you're combining SEMA retention with maybe 2 to 3 ejaculations a month for most men, with some sort of self-pleasure practice, you're actually learning how to transmute the sexual energy into the rest of your system and out into your electromagnetic field, which will make you more magnetic towards sexual partners, towards business opportunities, and towards abundance in all of its fashions.
Yeah, it's a really, really powerful practice that Will and I have taken on for quite some time now. And what I realized was that my body was preparing to create an upgraded or up-leveled version of myself every time that I was ejaculating. It was creating the most powerful, wonderful seed that it possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I was expelling that, I was losing a lot of energy. And I can think back to those times when I used to masturbate a lot, especially in my early 20s, and ejaculate a lot. And it was very easy for depression to sweep in that dark cloud. And the only thing that would snap me out of it momentarily was to masturbate again
and ejaculate.
So it's a vicious circle. And now I ejaculate maybe once every 1 to 3 months. That works for me. And what I like to do is edge and work with that edge, and hold on to that seed.
Yes.
And I'm still working on cultivating it and bringing it up into more of a body orgasm, which is, it takes a lot of mastery.
Yeah, it's a process, and I think that's great. And wouldn't you agree? It kind of as you're doing that process, it starts to make you feel more and more like a stag or like a minotaur. And then you get off on, we call it the valley orgasm. So a peak orgasm is where you ejaculate out your cockhead, whereas a valley orgasm is where you have these longer tantric experiences. And the key is to really elongate your exhalation, whether you're masturbating or having sex, and really feel yourself, in the words of Beyonce. I'm feeling myself. Like really feel juicy. And that's another reason why they put the gay panic in our psyches through medicine, through the schooling system and religion, is because they don't want you to feel juicy as a man. But it actually paradoxically makes you more, in my experience, heterosexually inclined to feel really, really juicy, because you really root yourself in your divine masculine polarity. So if your original nature is to be more of a heterosexually inclined human, you'll really ground into that. There is a certain percentage of the population, and it always has been throughout history, that are designed to be shamans. Two-spirit shamans is the word that the First Nations people called it. So I would say I'm in many ways like a modern day. I can't use the word two-spirit because I'm not First Nations. It's reserved for people who are Indigenous. But I really resonate with that understanding that we have alpha males who in ancient tribes had often many wives and many offspring. And then we had the shaman, who was what the modern culture would call the gay guy. And the gay guy's job was to help heal the alpha males when their wives were menstruating. And they weren't considered dirty. That's a misnomer. The women were considered too powerful for the alpha males to be around when they were menstruating. So the women would go and menstruate together because they'd all be on the same cycle. And the men would go to the gay dude, and the gay dude, the shaman, would lead them through these erotic bonding rituals, which would help them go on the same hormonal cycle as well, of increasing their testosterone while the women were ovulating. So it's divine masculine, divine feminine. So what I really just want to say is there's no such thing as gay and straight. It's really just grounding. And even alpha male and shaman, like all these labels, we don't need them anymore because we're in the Aquarian age where we can just be ourselves beyond labels, because labels are what the Matrix uses to divide and control us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They just create more separation.
Exactly. But what I want to say is that for the straight guys who are scared, oh, if I engage in these types of rituals, will it make me gay? No. If you're designed to be more heterosexually inclined, it'll actually shunt you more into that original self.
Couldn't agree more. It'll actually make you more whole and embodied, and it will help release that shame which restricts us as men.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I'm loving this conversation as always.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. It's fun.
We dive deep. And how do you think we can give men more permission to really own who they are?
Superfood, nutrition, and detoxification. Keyword for our times right now in my books is detox. We're assaulted as humans by so many different chemicals and so many different thought forms. Turn off the news. You are what you eat, what you drink, and especially what you think. So turn off the news.
This is so important because this is the foundation, really, isn't it? To set you off on a good foot each day.
Yeah.
It's what you're ingesting that can really disrupt your whole system. So if you create that strong foundation and filter out anything that is not good for your system, then you're off to a great start.
Totally. Yeah. You're especially what you think. So, you could eat all the superfoods and detox as much as you want, but if you're still watching the mainstream news every day, it's going to not have as much of an effect as if you spent time in nature and with like a men's group and like-minded souls, just communing and being a human, because there's a transhumanist agenda going on right now. And the rainbow flag, while it was initially designed to represent diversity, has now been co-opted by the cult that runs the planet, and it's become a symbol of globalism and transhumanism. You see people like Bill Gates actually wear a rainbow now on their a rainbow circle on their lapels.
Right.
Also, Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum. So just being aware of these identity movements, they were initially intended for good, but many of them have been co-opted by the darkness. So just turn it all off.
Turn it all
off and go out and do some cold plunging and shake your cock around.
Yeah, shake your cock around in nature. It does wonders.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonders.
Rewild yourself.
Yeah, rewild yourself. Be wild in nature.
Yeah, get in nature as much as you can.
Yeah. And what about the power of men's groups and brotherhood?
Yeah. Well, we've been grateful to be meeting once every 2 weeks for the whole last year. Even while the lockdowns were happening, we were told not to meet. We just said, fuck it. And we kept meeting. And I live alone downtown in a high rise. And if I hadn't had that men's group, I probably would be so depressed and really not in a good place. And so I think it's really important to listen to your gut and give yourself what you need, even if the dominator system doesn't want you to. Because if you don't fill yourself up to fullness, you'll have nothing to give others. So I think it's just physics. So you got to put yourself first. And if that means going against certain strictures of the dominator culture, so be it. I've been doing that my whole life. Like you know, it wasn't considered appropriate to sing. You weren't to sing if you were a boy in West Vancouver in the 1990s. That was considered really, really bad if you sang. So I said, well, I really like to sing. I've been singing since I was a baby. So I'm going to sing. And then yoga, according to the Bhagavad Gita, is the practice of tolerating the consequences of being your true self. So for me, the consequences were getting pushed into trash cans and bullied. But that was good because it strengthened my nervous system so that I can handle more pressure. Because when you're a leader, you have to prepare to be disliked and misunderstood. It's just part of the game. And in the words of Brené Brown, if you're going to put yourself in the arena, prepare to get your ass kicked. And I get my ass kicked every day. Like, my motto is, if I don't receive at least one piece of hate mail by noon, I'm not marketing hard enough. But for every one piece of criticism I meet 10 new people who are like, dude, some people have said, you've saved my life. You've helped me so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
It's so important what you just said there. If we're not pissing people off, then we're not being radical enough. And it takes being radical to shift anything in the world, in the society that we currently live in. So rather than focusing on that one troll that is on your social media, I love the way you turn that around. It's like, if I don't have at least one troll by 12 p.m., then I'm not marketing hard enough or being radical enough.
No, because let's face it, like, you have a message and you've got a mission, and you're here to actually share it. And so if you care what the naysayers think, the people in the nosebleeds, my new rule, I got this from Brené Brown, is I only take feedback and criticism from people who are also in the arena with blood and sweat on their face as well.
Yeah.
And if you're up in the nosebleeds, just firing like a troll, and I can tell usually who's a troll because they don't have any followers. Sometimes I wonder if they're a robot. And they have no profile picture. Usually it's just like a blank thing. And they're just going on at being super, super nasty. And you can also tell if it's a troll, because if it's true good feedback, it's addressing you as a human and treating you with respect. Whereas if it's a troll, it's just a character assassination. Oh, you're a faggot, or, oh, you're just doing this for attention, or, oh, I bet you're really lonely. This guy was like, oh, I bet you're just like really lonely. You're spending so much time masturbating by yourself. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm doing. It's like the best thing for me. My testicles are healthier than they've ever been. Like, of course. And I don't want to just have sex with anybody. I don't want to just relate to anybody. I'm very choosy now about who I spend my time with, because you become like the people you surround yourself with most. So yeah, I do spend a lot of time in meditation. I'm guilty as charged. I meditate a lot,
And really, that's what has supported you to grow so much over the last year. I mean, I've known you for almost 2 years now,
right?
And your growth and your evolution over the last year has really been resounding. I mean, you've created so much stability in your system. There's not much that can happen now that can rock you. Whereas, if you think back a year ago,
I was more susceptible to criticism
and being reactionary and triggered. But I really see that as the dedication to sharing your voice, and also your commitment to your practice.
Thank you.
Your devotion to yourself.
Thank you so much. Yeah, having good daily habits that keep us in our highest is the key. And the Kundalini yoga lineage, as my teacher said, the most powerful thing in this lineage is the daily sadhana, which is like a daily practice of self-love, basically. That could look like yoga, that could look like cold plunging, could look like going for a run, or listening to or reading a positive book or something. So it's those little steps, because if you improve your self-love by 1% every day, in the words of my friend Jonathan Gross, after a year, that's 100% improvement. After 100 days, that's 100% improvement. Yeah. After a year, it's like more than triple the improvement, almost quadruple the improvement. So just a little bit every day. Just make yourself do it. Right now, I'm doing the 75 hard challenge. I don't know if you've heard about it. There's an app you can get for it. Basically, it's 75 days of 2 workouts a day, one inside, one outside. And for me, that workout could be like an outdoor naked breathwork session at Rec Beach for 45 minutes, like make it really juicy and fun for you.
Yeah.
And then drinking 4 liters of water. And I like to get my water that's completely free of birth control pill remnants, because the mainstream municipal, I'm reading a book called Estrogeneration right now. Another way that men are emasculated is through the drinking water, because I'm sorry, but your Brita filter is not going to filter out the birth control pills, especially if you live in a low, what's it called, a low elevation place like Florida. The level of estrogens, fake estrogens from birth control pill runoff is so high in Tampa Bay, for example.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So we want to get our water from a good source. So I go up just before Lions Bay to harvest spring water once a week. And that's kind of my excuse also to get into nature at least once a week in that really sort of intense way, where I actually drive up into the mountains, get the spring water, and then just have that spring water and just, you know, even just detoxing through just having really healthy water, I think can go a long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's do a quick summary on what we've covered, because it's really important to be aware of what you're ingesting and consuming, whether it's what you're eating or what you're drinking or the information that you're taking in.
Yes.
And you become like
I'm just going to plug this in.
like a guardian of your being and your body, your sacred body, so that you're 100% aware of what you're consuming. Yes. And that's really the foundation to being able to feel alive when you wake up, and to tune into your body and to exude and share your power and your voice. And what else I heard you say was really being able to come together in community, you know, and brotherhood, which is so important, because we get to share these vulnerable sides of ourselves that we don't normally share. And that's incredibly healing, when we realize that we're not the only one who's got these challenges, and when we can just feel seen and heard and witnessed in our breakdowns and in our messiness, you know, allowing ourselves to be messy, as opposed to thinking that we need to keep calm and carry on.
Yeah. And it takes a special soul to, and I'm really grateful for you, because when you witness me in my messiness, I just sense love. And I don't know how you do it, because so many people are so judgmental. But it's almost like when we have to be mindful about who we choose to be vulnerable with. And people have to earn that right. And so in my life, Silver has earned that right, because he's shown me that he's non-judgmental. And so then when I am vulnerable, it's very healing, because if it's somebody who's judgmental, then it's just re-traumatizing.
Yeah.
And I pulled a card the other day from the Sacred Rebels Oracle. And it was like just what I needed to hear. Maybe we can just finish with this. Sometimes we believe that others tell us what we are, as though the self we see reflected back to us through their eyes is truth. Yet the accuracy of a reflection depends on the clarity of that which is doing the reflecting. If the receiver forms any opinion about what is perceived, then what is reflected back to us will at best be distorted. It is not necessarily through ill will. It is just the mechanics of the situation. Even the moon reflects the sun in varying degrees of fullness and clarity. We can learn something of the nature of the sun from the moon, but not as much through direct perception. It goes on, but it's that whole idea that, you know, you want to have people who are not like a little sliver of a moon, because then you're not getting the full reflection. And then it goes on to really encourage us to have that daily practice of turning inwards and just feeling ourselves on a direct level. Feeling ourselves on a direct level. And there's a meditation my teacher gave me where you go into like a sacred garden, you're surrounded by the angels of the light, or you could do it on a beach, and you see your 6-year-old self, and you can just say like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for abandoning you. I'm so sorry. And just see how they interact with you and your consciousness. Like, are they willing to come and give you a hug? Or are they kind of scared of you? When I started doing it, my 6-year-old, he was like, I don't trust you. And he just walked away.
Wow.
And I started to cry. But then after a few days, he like came closer. And so you do it once a day for 40 days. You just go to your secret garden and you just see your inner child and see how he or she is interacting with you. And you can say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, like the Honoponopona Prayer. And I found that's been helpful in spiritually reparenting the wounded child. And when I see somebody who's bullying me or a troll, I imagine them as a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old doing it to themselves.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. You know, when we share our humanity and our vulnerability with others, it really gives them permission to open up as well. And it really creates a much deeper level of connection. It creates that strong bond, that strong community, you know, people lean in.
Right.
And yeah, we really need that now more than ever. So share your truth, be vulnerable, be authentic, be aware of what you consume, be in brotherhood, be in community, and be naked in nature.
Amen.
Thank you so much for joining
pleasure. Thank
me
you so
today.
much for having me on your show.
Yeah, I love you so much.
I love you too. Awesome.
And we love you too.
Love you too. Sanam.
Sanam.